Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Monday Discourse for today, March 29th, 2021. I'm your host, Tristan. I stream 2 days a week on Mondays and Tuesdays. On Mondays from 12 to 2, which you're watching right now with Mia Mulder, who will be joining us in just a moment. And then Tuesdays, I do Step Back Tonight from 7 to 9, where it's just me. But this week, I'm changing up the schedule a little bit, so everybody... Instead of streaming tomorrow night, on Friday at 12:30, I'm going to be streaming with Mexi. So we're going to have a nice chat, and if you go to my typical question submission link, which I'll provide in a few minutes when I get to that on my opening spiel, you can actually submit questions specifically for that stream if you'd like. So, I go by he, him pronouns. You can find my work at stepbackhistory.com or tristanwon'tshutup.com. And if you want to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory and support Step Back. Get videos early. And, get videos early for as little as 84 cents a month. So, thank you for everybody who is doing that. And I appreciate everything you're doing. Next up, I also have Twitch. Also, if you want to support me, but you don't have any dosh, don't worry, you can always share the stream, or share the YouTube videos or whatnot. But if you have Amazon Prime, you can go to Twitch and you can drop a free once-a-month subscription with Twitch Prime, with a Amazon Twitch Prime sort of subscription thing. You get that for free. You don't have to pay any extra money. It comes with your Amazon Prime membership. And if you don't use it, Amazon basically just gets to keep your money, so you might as well get your money's worth. And there's a kitty here. This is Phoebe. She's my assistant, I guess. Assistant is in quotations. And if you want to see some of my latest work, the latest video I put out on Step Back was just last week, or just over the weekend, actually on Saturday. On Saturday, we did a video on... the white power movement and the U.S. military and weapons and stuff. People seem to be liking it, so definitely it features the voices of Second Thought and Tom Nicholas, so that's always fun. And yeah, the next video I'm working on right now, doing my first work on it today actually, has to do with the Armenian genocide, because it is April and I have been meaning to do a video on the Armenian genocide for a long time, so here we go. And then if you want to submit a question for future streams, including the one on Friday with Mexi, I'm going to put a link in the chat that you can go to. And bam. And lastly, before we call Mia, if you are new, this channel's been growing for the last few months. So if you are interested, enjoy the avalanche in your comment section by Turkish nationalists. Oh yeah, my body is ready. If this is your first time watching a stream, please make yourself known in the comments. We have a very lovely community that helps each other out and is very kind. So please join on in. All right, let's get me on the horn.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, don't
You can hear me. You can see me.
Yep, I'm just
Everything's perfect.
yeah, there's a cable. Phoebe tried to bite my headphone cable again, but besides that, we're good.
God bless. Hi.
Hello. Who is you?
I'm older. I make YouTube videos.
I've
They're
heard
good.
about that.
I've heard about YouTube videos. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw. I heard you had. I heard you made one recently. I heard you made one recently, but I decided that I didn't want to work, so I watched it while I was supposed to be working.
Yeah, I made a video about anti-work recently. It's doing well. I feel like the last couple of months, the videos that I made they've been picking up. People seem to like it.
It's your most bread-pilled video to date, so.
It definitely is. It's. I thought it was like gonna be like boring theory that was gonna end up getting like not a lot of views, but turns out people like being told that they shouldn't work that much.
Yeah.
Turns out. But yeah, dude, I've been doing that.
You're 6 months of videos away from being like why Peter Kropotkin was right about everything.
We'll see. There's definitely some most of like anti-work ideology is like very, very like hardcore anarchist. But there are like there's all sorts of like anti-work ideology in some sort. There's like authoritarian right-wing anti-work ideology, which basically builds itself on having slaves and slowly replacing them with machines. But you should still be in ownership. There's all sorts of weird ideology there. It's so weird. And I could have gone into all of those things, but that would be too much work. So I didn't want to do that.
Fair. You also, so go check out Mia Mulder on the internet. That's where she primarily puts her content.
Yes. Primarily, yeah. I also have a podcast about medical history called Leech Fest. It's very good. If you wanna listen to that. Which is less bread pilled, but more. You can show this to your mom, who is like conservative, to learn about like the Black Death and stuff, and they will be bread pilled by slowly.
Oh, someone's asking if the internet's come out for computers yet.
No, not yet. It's only for phones. Computers aren't gonna get the internet for like a few months.
I do have a positive update on the home front. We were eating lunch today, and Phoebe joined me. And I remember that she was being bullied by the other cat, so she was like afraid to leave my office. But today, she went downstairs into the living room of her own accord. There was no food involved. So maybe there's some progress happening. Maybe this old girl's actually going to have a house again. Except for her actual house, which I don't know if is in the shot right now. But this little thing here is what she lives in.
Bless.
But right now she's on my desk. She's very good. Wonderful. She's a very good girl.
Very good kitty.
Mm-hmm. How you been? I mean, we missed the most Monday Discourse story, which started right after the last stream and has ended as of last night, which is Big Boat stuck.
Big boat stuck, but Big Boat still stuck, I think. Still stuck. It's floating, but it's still stuck, I think.
I think I just saw things that they moved into the part where it's the waterway is now too big for Big Boat to be stuck. And we tragically have to accept that Big Boat not stuck.
No, you're right. It's moved. It's just moved. It literally just like left the canal. Damn it.
Listen, just like a Star Trek episode where a new character looks like they're joining the crew, but and everybody universally likes them, and they have a what's it called? They have an expensive looking costume. You know that it wasn't going to last forever.
Yeah. Oh my god, that was like not too long ago either. It was like really recently it started moving.
Yeah, we were watching Voyager, and every once in a while we were talking about, is Big Boat stuck again? Because there was a little bit where Big Boat was restuck.
Like, but I'm just waiting for it to get stuck again, because there's like two canal bits of the Suez Canal, right? Like there's there's the first bit, and then there's like a lake area, and then there's like another canal bit before it like splits and becomes a bit more like loosey goosey.
This feeds well
Can you
into...
imagine how fun it would be if it crashes again?
Now, yeah, this does feed into my theory that 2021 was cursed and 2020 was cursed and 2021 was based. And the
2021 is definitely like 2021 is the year of the comeback. Like we're getting vaccines, stopping international trade.
There's been some based stuff
the horde.
But like also like while in like 2020 the worst possible outcome is always what happened, in 2021 the craziest possible outcome is what happens. So boat gets stuck again would be the most based thing to have happened. So in 2021 it could happen.
Yeah, I would just love for it to happen, because like there are container ships that are like turning around and heading back towards the Suez Canal now. Like,
yeah,
imagine if you get back to the Suez Canal, it gets stuck and they have to turn around again. It would be comedy gold.
I wanted to make one of the most specific and possibly darkest memes of the whole thing, which was if it lasted long enough that the ships were starting to turn around in a large way to go around the Cape of Good Hope, I'd be like, oh man, all of these shipping freighters that didn't hire private security because they were going through the Gulf of Aden. And then it's just like as they go around the Horn and past Somalia, all the pirates are just like, yes. Like, what's that meme of that guy who's like he's licking his lips and looking around the corner?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, we're gonna have so many of what was that captain from the movie with the Somali pirate movie? It was played by Tom Hanks, I think.
Oh, I have no idea. Are you meaning the meme that's like, look at me, I'm the captain now?
Yeah. Listen, I was definitely excited for India and like these massive transit corporations making a huge economic stimulus donation to Somalia. So, Captain Phillips, that was it.
Right. Well, I mean, apparently it's still going to take like a few days for the backlog to clear out. So, you know, they're still losing money every hour, like millions and millions of dollars. So that's fun.
Don't you hate when you're stuck in boat traffic?
I'd love to be stuck in boat traffic. Have you seen the images of it? Like it's like hundreds at this point. Like, well, maybe not hundreds, but like dozens of container ships just waiting.
Yeah, I've seen like the I don't know what site this is that everyone's using to watch the boat map, but I've been seeing like the little icons. I'm wondering though if it's like one of those things that looks like it's super packed in, but if you were actually on one of these ships, because they're so spaced out, you just can't see anything.
Oh, apparently you can see it, but yeah, you're right. Like they're pretty spaced out, because like they drift a lot also when they're anchored, so they can't really be like packed together super tight.
Yeah, and I imagine that these boats don't want to get anywhere close to each other.
No, it's generally like a bad idea.
Sinking your ship is generally bad for business. Is the ship still stuck.com?
Yeah, I've been frequenting that site. It's been a very good site.
I do like though that if the Ever Given ever gets into some other shenanigans, everyone's gonna be like some there's definitely like there are people who their version of trains are like shipping freighters. Yeah. And there are people who are going to be watching the Ever Given just in case something funny happens again.
Yeah. I love that there are I saw this mentioned on an episode of Well, There's Your Problem, but like there are plane people, there are train people, and there are boat people. Plane people, I don't remember how they act, but apparently they get like pretty pissy. Boat people are like chill as fuck. trained people are the people who like are very active on Twitter. So apparently, like these various subcultures exist, but they're very separate from each other. And it just happens that as part of like lefty Twitter, we're just adjacent to train the trained people.
Just our what's it called? Our valence to Justin Rosniak put us in train world.
Yes. Thanks to him, we're actually.
Now we need a sarcastic Philadelphia YouTuber who makes videos about international shipping. And we
like,
will.
I could do that. Like I could take that role, but I'm not even close to as funny as Ross is. So
yeah, I was supposed to say like if someone were to, I was trying to describe Do Not Eat 01, the YouTube channel, to it, and it's like I don't know how to explain that a person with absolutely no affect, with just this like super thick Philadelphia accent, will make a bunch of videos where he's playing a Swedish video game about making cities. And not only will you learn tons of stuff about American history, but you will be laughing the entire time while he's almost not telling any jokes. Or well, at least the delivery is if he's not telling a single joke. Except for the stuff about Mike and all of his friends that are also named Mike.
I think this has nothing to do with our segment, obviously, but I think the first thing I ever saw from Do Not Eat, and you should watch Do Not Eat 01, by the way, amazing channel about infrastructure. The first one I saw was when he reviewed the industry's expansion to city skylines, where he introduced the DLC as being that you have been hired by the Chinese Communist Party, by Deng Xiaoping, to build worker housing and mining equipment for the glorious People's Republic of China.
Hey, Ramsey, thank you so much for rating us. Much appreciated. Thank you, all the new people. Someone's never heard of Do Not Eat. Oh, you're in for a treat.
It's a good watch.
Yeah.
Bad, dang it. Bad. Yeah, but like that's how we explain the industry's expansion, because it's the state capitalism expansion that he as he puts it.
My favorite Do Not Eat video is, of course, his review of Soviet Republic.
Have you heard of this new game called Workers and Resources Soviet Republic?
I just remembered that that I was turned on to Do Not Eat by Matt, and he was just like, you don't understand. This is a guy who plays city skylines and is a civic engineer and talks about civic engineering, and it's the funniest shit I've ever seen. You won't be able to stop watching it. And I was like, that can't be true. And now I have watched Franklin 3 times. The entire series.
Franklin is one of the best shows on YouTube, like by far.
Yeah, Franklin is like, I've never there's only a few videos where I feel like intense, deep jealousy that someone else was able to talk about this in a much better way than I could, and he's done that for like almost every episode of Franklin, especially when talking about mercantilism and Alexander Hamilton. The only video that wasn't a Do Not Eat video that I felt that kind of intense jealousy on is the 3 Arrows video on the Crusade. Hey, Shaggy, thank you for the $5 super chat. Plug my book, Adventures in the Multiverse, available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon's websites. All right, I have no idea what Adventures in the Multiverse is. I cannot verify, but now that I have said its words on Amazon, let's see what Adventures in the Multiverse is. Okay, it's a novel, apparently. I don't know. Are you Tyler J. Harbottle? Well, there you go. That's about as much as I have never read this book, so I wholeheartedly defend everything that's in it, regardless of what's said.
Regardless of content.
Yeah. Especially because every time that it's doing something, if there's something terrible in it, it's just being ironic. It's just memes. That's what I learned. If you say it's just memes, then you can get away with anything.
Mm.
Okay. In Minecraft. Okay. So we do occasionally answer questions on this stream.
Sometimes. At least. 2 questions per hour.
Yeah, I've
If we're
got one. Actually, I'd be very curious to hear your take on, because you know much more about actually both of these than I do. So I think that this is going to be some good Mia content coming out of this. Oh boy, and I'm just going to cover the fact that Phoebes is just throwing up in the background because she's a cat.
No, go take care. Go take care of Phoebe.
Oh, she's fine. She's good. I'll be. She's one of those cats that does like it's just a hairball. Cats. You've never owned a cat, have you?
No, I have.
Okay, it's like cats throw up on average. Cats throw up on average like every other day.
Yeah.
So, the first question is okay. What are your thoughts on shifting the focus of queer theory away from events and more towards subtle narratives? E.g., I'm trying to write my master's dissertation on queer identity in NASA. So maybe so queer history is shockingly recent, which is the weirdest thing.
Yes.
There's like, I don't know. I know like my queer history is mostly American stuff. Like I think of George Chauncey and so it comes out of the sort of history turn. So history had something called the cultural turn, which is when we figured out theory, which was in the 1990s when everybody else was doing it in like the 1960s and 70s. And so a lot of the new branches of history that have been breaking out since the 90s have been us integrating theory that was developed back in the 60s and 70s and starting to actually look at things. And queer history is taking queer theory and looking at history. And queer theory, as a American studies Americanist who's read a lot of theory, possibly the hardest to understand theory out there.
For sure.
But you actually do queer history. That was your thing.
Yes, I have studied queer. I have studied history and queer history. It's like away from events and to more subtle narratives. That's really hard to.
Is this something
sort of like narrow down? Because like I focus mostly on events myself. Subtle narratives. I'm not super sure what that implies.
My guess is that it's when queer history was first taking off in the 1990s. It was mostly about like trying to find the stories of LGBT people in history, and then like more recent work, like there was that. And the more recent work is trying to kind of like do to history what like happens in like literary studies with like queering text. About like looking more for the challenges of heteronormativity and such in sort of fields like for example, an early version of queer history would be like George Chauncey's Gay New York, one of my favorite history books of all time, which is about the underground gay scene in New York during the Prohibition era, when police were still bribable and the mafia still owned half of the businesses. So gay clubs and stuff like that could just exist without much pressure from the state. And there's some cool stories. It's great. One of my faves. But then like a more recent one might be like the Lavender Scare story, about how it's trying to take the story of like the McCarthy era and look into how it was used quite a bit to attack LGBT people who were working in the government at the time, because they were considered quote unquote blackmail risks.
Yeah.
Also, there's got to be some sort of interesting study about the fact that the two leaders of the McCarthy era, Joseph McCarthy and what the hell was his lawyer's name? Oh gosh, this brain is going to kill me. Because it's like one of the most infamous evil lawyers in history. Someone's going to say it in the chat. But both of the two like big people, Roy Cohn, that's it, Roy Cohn. Both of them likely gay, and were like the spearheads of McCarthyism, which was one of the most like which led to like one of the most homophobic manhunts in like witch hunts in like the government and stuff.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I'm just not super sure, like, because I feel like when I studied queer history, I studied history more like from like a scientific perspective rather than like queerifying, like, already existing narratives. So I'm not super sure I'm super qualified to answer the question as it is. I feel like there's probably a good use to doing that, but I think that's like a bit different than what I did, because I'm more like I'm more like very like tackle like directly like LGBT science, like so I approach it more from like a scientific and ideological perspective rather than an event based or a narrative perspective. So I'm not really into either of these perspectives myself. So I'm not super sure how to answer that question myself though. Mm-hmm. You good perspectives though, and I think I don't know, I feel like diversity in thought when it comes to like queer theory and queer history in general is probably a good thing, because as it stands right now, the only people who really do it are like 4 people who are not LGBT, and then everyone else is like then there are like 5 people scattered across like 10 universities who do like queer history like properly. So more diversity of like approaches is probably a good thing.
Yeah, you know that when there's so few experts in the field that like George Chauncey, who's like, I don't know if you've heard of him. He is like probably one of like the most forefront like American queer history people. And he's had to like, there's so few historians in this field that like he's had to personally have to write statements for a bunch of like court decisions and stuff like that came up with LGBT history issues and such. And so he's like become the name in that.
Yeah, that tracks. As with many things in like directly LGBT issues, there are responsibility usually falls on like a few people. Has historically happened like that and probably still does, as you say.
When I left the academic study of history, the big things that were coming up were like the big fields that were growing, and I think they're pretty big at this point, is food history and animal history and children's history and sort of environmental history. Those are like the new things that people were really the new hot topics. Sort of, there's some cool stuff in that, but
yeah, I feel like there were similar trends here in Sweden, pretty much. Like, especially food history. There's a lot of food history here for some reason.
It's like the new hot thing to do in history circles is like trying to understand culture through its food culture. The biggest one I could think of is there's this author who has done a lot of work understanding the culture of like. It's a really interesting way to try to study the culture of people, especially pre-literate societies, like, or societies that just didn't have writing that survived. Like the biggest one that comes through to me is there's this one author who's used food history to like show a really deep understanding about the connection between the culture of enslaved people in the American South and modern day through like exploring their food and things like that. You've probably seen him. He shows up in a lot of stuff.
Maybe.
Okay, so this one I Googled after I got the question, and I was like, this is a question that I'm like, oh, if Mia knows about this, I'm going to be so excited. If you don't, it's fine, because I think that you'll like the idea anyway. But apparently there's something called the Great Stirrup Controversy. And it has a lot to do with a like sort of big history of the European history.
Okay.
So this is the stirrup controversy. The academic debate about the stirrup thesis. The theory that feudalism in Europe developed largely as a result of the introduction of the stirrup to cavalry in the 8th century. It relates to a hypothesis by Lynn Townsend White Jr. in his 1960 book, Medieval Technology and social change, White believed that the stirrup enabled heavy cavalry and shock combat, which in turn prompted the Carolingian dynasty of the 8th and 9th century to organize its territory into a vassalage system, rewarding mounted warriors with land grants for their service. White's book's been proven very influential, but others have accused him of speculation, oversimplification, and ignoring contradictory evidence to the subject. Scholars have debated whether the stirrup actually provided the impetus for social change, or whether the rise of heavy cavalry resulted from political changes in medieval Europe.
Yeah, that's I have heard about this. I have my own like hypothesis that is also like super simplified, which is the iron and nail hypothesis.
The iron nail.
That feudalism primarily came about because of the proliferation and simplification of iron nails. It is an oversimplification, but it is an oversimplification that I stand by. So what is the question about the Great Stirrup controversy?
Do we have opinions on it?
Well, I mean, I like simple explanations. I like them.
What kind of historian are you? No historian likes simple explanations.
I like it because then I don't have to say, well, it's complicated and we don't fully know and understand why. I like it.
If your answer is to why did...
It's wrong, though.
If your answer to why feudalism happened isn't at least a 1,000-page book, like...
Okay, but that's why I like it, though, because a simple explanation allows me to sort of like just fuck around, like as a joke answer. If I had to give an actual real answer, then yes, there would be 1,000 pages going back to like the foundation of Babylon, and the fucking triumvirate system of the Roman Empire and shit. But I like this because it's so wrong. Okay, that's my opinion. I think it's wrong, but I like it because it's simple and it's stupid. I also like ancient alien theory because it is also wrong and stupid and like very racist. It is.
The only thing I like about the stirrup theory is that it would then be yet another example of how everything that is associated with like what Nazis consider like the dominance of the West is just them like saying, hey, Middle East, I didn't do my homework, can I just copy off yours?
Yeah.
I showed this video on the Reactor a while back that was just like about how it was somebody who was talking about Greece as like the Greece was like the cradle of civilization, and they were like, this lady's just like it was like we're like birth civilization. She's like, I mean, Greece birthed European civilization, which like you can argue like by studying it that like it set women back by like 2,000 years. And that they learned to write from the Phoenicians, who are Middle Eastern, and it was just like this like, and it's like at least like they call what's it called? At least they call Greek the what's it called? The mother of all languages, and then she's like, oh wait, they don't, and they just pointed at Sanskrit.
I'm just reading about like some criticisms to White's ideas because. One criticism is that like armored like horse cavalry has existed for at least 1,000 years before the Carolingian dynasty, which is true, which is like my gut instinct. That's why it's wrong. And White argues that that criticism isn't valid because previous generations were essentially armored bowmen, so that doesn't count. I like. This, to me, this has an energy of Virgin versus Chad explanations of history, where the Virgin explanation is the true one, which is like, oh, it's complicated and there are many like interlocking factors of like various political changes and economic and environmental changes, versus the Chad one, which is just like horse.
Look, we found a way to be where you wear armor while on horse. That's how you win. Somebody asked what the name. Somebody asked what the name of the slave food historian guy was. His name's Michael Twitty, and he's actually very interesting, and he's in a lot of stuff. Like once you've seen him, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen him in everything. Yeah, but I I like the idea of the big horse make Europe. I mean, like, it's like a simple way to explain like the kind of weird way that, like, if you look at like European history, it's like, wow. If you were to like look at like the strict power dynamics of feudal Europe, you'd be like, this is a society that really likes people who have big horses. Like, it's like a big horse hierarchy. The bigger horse you can have, the more land you get to have. And that's why, like, the thing is, like, there are like many of the breeds of horse that existed in the Middle Ages don't exist anymore because they were just these like giant horses that like have no purpose today.
Like, they really have no need, unless we're somehow going into like shock cavalry battlements for no reason.
What I always thought about that was just like, okay, I got like the training must have been intense because like, I don't know, everything I know about horses is that they like have panic attacks over like the smallest things they can like imagine.
Yes.
Like that they just freak the fuck out over like everything. And it's like, how do you send a horse into a place where like everybody's just like stabbing and killing each other?
So that's an interesting thing. You can train a horse to do that. You like by slowly like getting them used to like stepping in like uncomfortable terrain, getting them used to like loud noises, and getting them used to like the views of like armor and swords and quick movements. You can do that, but there are many like medieval like equestrian trainers who say that like once a horse has been in battle once, that's basically it. Like that horse isn't going back. Like the horse will do what it does like in battle where you do it. If you have like really good control and you're really well trained and the horse has been like prepared for it. But after the battle, it's not going back in. Like that's because after that they're like traumatized and they're not even gonna like they're not gonna fuck with that anymore because they know that it's way more scarier than the training implied.
So that means that there's got to be like there must have been like an entire industry of like, I mean, probably not because of the animal cruelty back then. I was like, there's got to be like a whole like industry of like taking care of old horses, and it's like they probably just killed them and they ate them if they were in France.
Probably, or like I mean, a lot of them were retired to become like workhorses. So
yeah, I guess
something.
Horses had use back then. It's like unless you're in France, you wouldn't kill a perfectly good horse just to eat it. I don't know why I keep making this joke about French people liking to eat horses, but
well, listen. If they're gonna invent the modern idea of feudalism and they have big horse culture, then yeah, they probably ate a couple of horses. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know what my cat. I'm sorry about this sound. Phoebe, what are you doing? What is in the bag that you want to play with so bad? There's like a very crinkly bag that she's like, I decided I need to dig through this to find out the treasure within. And it's like,
I need this bag.
It's like a spirit Halloween bag that's like filled with like I think when I moved I just stuffed like all of the random shit from like costumes from previous videos in there. Like I think she liked the feather that was like from my Baron Samedi hat. Man, that was incorrect. Yeah, here's a rejection of the theory. The idea that stirrups caused feudalism makes the assumption that horses exist, which in Harris Bomber Guy theory shows that horses aren't real. I forgot about that argument.
Exactly. So stirrups are actually useless. It's just a weird historical artifact that we don't really know what they were used for.
Mm-hmm. The other simplified theory I'll take on the big horse theory is that the Punic Wars traumatized Europe so much that they were like, we need to have our own elephants, so we're just going to turn our horses into elephant size.
God, the Middle Ages were a wild time when you think about it.
This is true.
There's a real possibility that like you invade Spain and the elephants come to fight you. Like that's a real possibility. You go to Greece and a lion eats you because lions are in Greece now for some reason.
Yep. All I have to think is like, it's weird that the lion became like a symbol of England.
Yeah, because lions used to be lions were super common in like southeastern Europe for a time, and
Yeah.
like Greece and Anatolia, the modern day like area of Jerusalem and Palestine. Like there were lions there
Yeah.
for a while. No longer.
What happened? We don't know. We think they went into hiding.
Probably they went south. Probably not actually. Those lions were there already. They burrowed like
And
cicadas. They're gonna come out soon.
oh man, we're just gonna invent new oversimplified theories of history. Um,
No, but like that's why I like my bullshit idea of like the iron nail, because like the proliferation of iron nail technology allows people to make their own farmsteads, which makes villages more sustainable over urban centers, which forces the establishment of a vassalage culture, thus promoting the idea of feudalism.
yeah, it's very.
That's literally a theory that I have that I haven't fully dismissed.
It's what's it called? That's very materialist. Like I always think about how, in the time when like the metal that everyone used was an alloy that was made from two metals that don't necessarily show themselves together, with tin and copper, that you end up with a society that had these like extremely strong governments that had a very managed economy because you had to facilitate large scale international trade before you had transportation technology, and then you end up with pharaohs and Zoroastrian emperors and stuff like that.
Mm.
I just watched a video the other day that fucking blew my mind that showed that the possibility that the Sea People was actually like a workers' revolution against the like Pharaohtariat or whatever.
The Pharaohtariat.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Which is like, oh man. Okay.
Someone's asking about the Sea Peoples.
Sea People.
Sea People probably existed, yeah.
But like the theory is that they were like, you know, it was like a workers' revolt in the form of Sea People.
Mm. Probably not. Probably it's like Proto-Greeks or something like that. Proto-Italians.
Would be an Italian thing to do.
Yeah,
Which would be the European thing to do, go around the Middle East and set civilization back a few thousand years.
Yeah, it was actually like Proto-Norsemen coming down and just like doing a test run.
Yeah. I was thinking more of the Crusades, but yeah, the Norseman works too.
Either way.
Europe is like the what's it called? The Ur example of just like destroying everything that civilization's built and then just turning around and trying to take credit for it all.
Yes. Plus.
Also, Kelly did say over the weekend that Yoshi is Mario and Luigi's Vespa. So
Yeah. I haven't thought about that before, but it's definitely true.
there's a lot of obvious lack of understanding of it, of essential parts of Italian culture within Mario. Okay, this is the next. Oh, Phoebe just deleted the question. I have to undo.
Anti-cat question.
It says, "Do you see any?" She is from the United States. Do you see any path of some sort of proportional representation in the House of Representatives in America? In I guess the U.S. because the House of Representatives is in the U.S. So it's not Congress. This is the House of Representatives, which
which is like the good part of it.
Yeah, it's gerrymandered to all shit. But the amount of seats is supposed to be roughly proportional to population. The only problem is it doesn't factor like undocumented people, and it doesn't factor like state lines and stuff like that. Like we talked about this in like last week, that like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's district with one congressperson has more people than the entire state of Wyoming, which also has one congressperson.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I saw something maybe in Vox or something that like proposed doing like super districts, and that might be something. So like you can't. That's way harder to gerrymander. So the idea is that like you would like take 4 or 5 districts, merge them together into one district, but then that one district is proportional. So like if there is 20% of the vote Republican, for example, and 80% Democrat, then one of the seats in that district becomes Republican, which means that like the minority is represented in the district. So there's this kind of like combination between like local representatives, because you still have like your local representative, right? If you have a super district, it just becomes like slightly more diluted. And it's still from your state, and it's still from like your area. And but at the same time, like it doesn't like fuck with proportionality that much. So the overall thing would become more proportional. Also, it's way harder to gerrymander because if there are like 2 super districts, like if no matter how you gerrymander them, like it still might be weird. And I think that's probably the most realistic solution that America has. It's probably not the best, but I think people who are like local representation fanatics, they're probably the ones who are going to be satisfied by that, like as a sort of compromise. And it would probably be the best option there. From there, I would hope that like the Senate would be abolished, the presidency would go on the popular vote, and then slowly we would come into like an actual democracy again.
Yeah, trying to think of like anytime you're trying to think of like a viable way to move towards X in American politics, you basically have to assume that the federal government is not going to do anything, because it seems like it's structurally incapable of doing even like basic things. But so you have to like completely rely on states to work together to figure stuff out. Like the Electoral College, we're not going to be able to get rid of it because you're going to have you'd have to change the Constitution, and America worships its Constitution, and they haven't had an amendment in like almost 30 years now. While we like the last time we amended our Constitution, Jordan Peterson got really mad about it. But
sending people to jail for misgendering.
Yeah, it's weird. It's been 5 years, still hasn't happened, not even once.
There's been one, allegedly. Someone has some people got really angry that there may have been one, but it turns out that the truth of that is actually that it was someone who like continuously harassed a trans person for like half a year or 2 years or some shit like that. So that doesn't really count.
Yeah,
but still.
So like for example, the way to fix the Electoral College that makes the most amount of sense is something called the Electoral College Interstate, or the Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is just states signing on to a thing to just give their electoral college votes to whoever wins a popular vote. And in America, where it's a bunch of like barely functional republics being overseen by one completely non-functional republic, you have to do everything through those barely functional republics.
Yeah, so like with this like weird rule, that might work. But they don't have enough states for that compact yet for it to work, right?
No,
and that's just for the presidency. Like that has nothing to do with anything else.
But they're surprisingly close, and there's enough states that are considering it right now that if only like a few of them passed it through, then it would work. The problem that really comes up is the fact that they haven't gotten a single Republican state on board with it. It's all Democratic states at this point. Yeah, someone just pointed out they got convicted for harassment, not C-16. Yeah, C-16 exactly. Has like the bill C-16 peoples. God damn it. Yeah, C-16 has yet to have a single. I think it's yet to have a single time that's actually been used, because it's almost as if Jordan Peterson intentionally or unintentionally doesn't understand our hate speech laws.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't believe that fucking law was the thing that brought him to fucking fame. And then he wrote 12 Rules for Life and
like C-16 would like the only time that like the gender inclusion thing for C16 would have been invoked is like if somebody tried to publish, I don't know, there's probably like some like super there's probably some super turf novel in the UK or something, right? There's got to be at least one. Like what's that there's that one novel or that one book that the turfs are always using that I think Jesse Gender reviewed at one point. Anyways, if you were to try to publish like some like super anti-trans book in like mainstream stores in Canada, C16 can be used to block the publication of that book. Like we used the human rights, like we used the constitutional ban on hate speech to ban like the Turner Diaries. Like you can't just publish the Turner Diaries in Canada. You have to go and find it for free on the internet instead. So it's like I worked for the Canadian version of the ACLU, and I was like buddies with the lawyer who focused on stuff to do with religious expression and religious expression and hate speech stuff. And the main thing that I took away from her is that our hate speech laws are extremely weak. It's so hard to act, like we have spent the last like few decades weakening all of our hate speech laws to the point where like it has to be like pants on head obvious to actually work. And it very rarely is invoked. Like the last time that, like the only big case I remember it being invoked, like it's invoked in cases like there was this famous case of a guy who was like a famous Holocaust denier who tried to publish like a big Holocaust denier book that they censored, or that they said you couldn't publish his book in Canada. And sometimes stuff like it's part of the reason why David Icke's not allowed to speak in Canada for anti-Semitism.
Sorry, what?
Like it's one of the reasons why David Icke's not allowed in Canada.
Oh, correct. I don't know what that is.
David Icke is the guy behind the reptilian conspiracy theories and stuff.
Oh yeah, I remember that name now. Fucking lizard people ass.
The guy who I'm talking about his name was Ernst Zundel, who was a neo-Nazi who tried to publish Holocaust denier literature and was put up on hate crime stuff for it.
That's not great.
Yeah. Someone just asked, how's the plague situation there? Bad. We are really bad. Canada is 55th in the world for vaccine rollout.
Oh, that's almost guaranteed better than what we are, but like I see where you're coming from, but like, at least you're not Sweden. I'm like guaranteed Sweden's worse.
The best part is that the premier of my province is blaming Justin Trudeau for not doing good vaccine stuff, while the same day that a news story came out saying that the province is sitting on like hundreds of thousands of vaccines because they just want to have a nice collection. A pile of poop with the face. Thank you, Shaggy. Thank you for the super chat saying a pile of poop with the face.
Bless.
All right. Oh, someone asked if there were Norsemen involved in the crusade.
Yes, in the Northern Crusades, which no one freaking talks about, which is where like Danes invaded Sweden and then Swedes invaded Finland, which is why Sweden like eventually controlled Finland as part of like its national territory, because the Danes convinced us to convert to Christianity, and then we invaded Finland and forced them to convert to Christianity and also to become force them to become Swedish.
About like, yeah, because I'm always thinking like, what year would they
that was
consider...
a crusade, by the way, technically a crusade called by the Pope, but no one talks about it.
About what time was like, could you like safely say that Sweden was like Christian and not doing blood eagles anymore?
Like a year 1000-ish, probably a bit earlier, but like a year 1000 would probably be like, we're probably done by now.
Okay.
I think it's like I want to say Björn the Heathen or something. There was a slight like insurrection from someone who lived around this area where I'm at currently, who who like he led some sort of like uprising against the Christian king, got put down, and that was like the final like death strokes of the Norse.
Sweden was like, you can go on a Viking, but it has to be Christian. So
It has to be Christian. You can go Viking in Finland or the Baltics until they become Christian too.
And then upon finding out that Finland had no gold, they decided to stop.
Yeah.
Right. Why was South Africa the only place where boycotting, divestment, and sanctioning had any positive effect when the UK and Israel still traded with it? Why was South Africa the only place where boycotting, divestment, and sanctioning had any positive effect? I mean, I think that the main thing, if I can remember correctly from my South Africa video, is that it was a really big meme. So like a lot of people got on board with like they like what's it called? Like there were like famous musicians who published songs about how they're not going to they're not going to do concerts in South Africa. It was like a really big moment in like the late '80s to make a big deal about it. It was like, you know, people. It was like it almost became mainstream to be against supporting South Africa because of apartheid and stuff like that. So in that case, like keep in mind, like there was a point where it was so intense that South Africa couldn't even have movies in their movie theater anymore, because movie theaters, like movie production companies, were refusing to like show their movies in South Africa. And South Africa, I mean, I just knowing the geopolitics of the non-North American world, it might have been when they were banned from FIFA, and they weren't allowed to participate in the World Cup because they had a whites-only soccer team. So FIFA said they couldn't participate. And you as a European know that if FIFA taken away, that's like revolution right there.
Oh yeah, that's the end of Europe as we know it.
The ultimate sanction, there's two crimes that are unforgivable if you're a country that is not in North America, and that is being involved with Eurovision and then not being involved with Eurovision. This is a big deal. And that's probably one of the main reasons why BDS against Israel has not really worked, because we haven't been able to find a way to get them out of Univision, which they're in for some reason. Or Eurovision, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, like boycotting Israel is like not seen as like a big thing, so like that's probably not why it's super effective. Apartheid is like way easier to oppose, because like I really don't think that like a lot of people understand just how much Europeans and like just white people in general just like hate Palestinians for no reason. You know, they shouldn't, you know, obviously like people like I try to like boycott like Israeli products as much as I can, but I don't know, like it's not a popular thing. Like I feel like people talked about it more like last year, and even then it wasn't even that popular.
Yeah, there's the sort of like history of Israel in the context of the country's foundation, as well as you know, intentional, like conscious work on behalf of like the United States and the United Nations to dismiss the plight of Palestinian people. And then of course the very visible situation where like the 1970s Palestinians like or people working on behalf of Palestine like did a few hijackings and mass murders that didn't exactly help their cause. Like in the Munich Olympics, which is kind of infamous. So there's a lot, like it is a lot more of like history attached to it. And when it comes to Israel specifically, like I think it's another thing, like kind of like how socialism is such a dirty word with olds, is that defending Israel is such like a strong part of like how boomers seem to see their political self-concept that younger people don't necessarily have. And so it might be one of those things, as you're starting to see, things are starting to change a little tiny bit, but
slowly.
But once boomers stop like their like sort of like death grip on politics, then maybe things will change. So that's about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, like, oh, I was missing my point here. Never mind. Not yeah, like
Oh, yeah, like investment and boycotting works like way more efficiently when like a significant amount of people are actually on board with it. If not enough people are on board with it, it doesn't really have an effect. Like a boycott only works if enough people boycott.
and not to mention Israel is a much more important strategic ally for Western countries in the middle and NATO and stuff in the Middle East than whatever role like support for apartheid South Africa was more because they didn't want what they thought were Marxist guerrillas to take over the government and align with the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union was because they were against a U.S. backed state were supplying like weapons and stuff to like anti-apartheid people. Because the Cold War was fucking dumb.
Cold War was fucking dumb. That's true.
Okay. And there's no Cold War, so it's a different type of situation. Okay. What we got next here? Okay, so this is let's see. This is a soldiery question. So in his video on the Wehrmacht, Three Arrows made the case that individual acts of good soldiering in the Wehrmacht are secondary because of the military and ideological structure of the Wehrmacht. At the same time, in other videos, he made the case that people in general, both soldiers and civilians, knew about the Holocaust, which is true, and it was so normalized they didn't do anything about it or compartmentalized it in their head. Bad Empanada says this too about the Argentine junta disappearances. For the first point, do you think that's a fair assessment, given that individual acts of good soldiering saved lives? For the second point, and this may apply to anything from colonial regimes to cops to soldiers today, do you think it's fair since A, soldiers were conscripted, and B, people might have been afraid for their own lives or income might have been connected to the regime in question, but not to the genocidal acts themselves?
Could you repeat the second point? I heard the first one, but what could you say? Repeat the second.
For the second point, and this may apply to anything from colonial regimes to cops to soldiers, do you think it's fair since A, soldiers were conscripted, and B, people might have been afraid of their own lives or their income might have been connected to the regime in question, but not the genocidal acts in themselves? I mean, the first thing to say is if your income is tied to killing people, that like maybe you should, I don't know. It's just whatever. Poverty sucks. Killing people also sucks.
Also sucks. I feel like the individual act of good soldiers is definitely like secondary to like the structure and like general purpose of the Wehrmacht. So I don't fully understand the question, if I'm honest. Could you copy paste it just in the Discord things just so I can reread it?
Sure. It's a very long question, so.
The people in general knew about the Holocaust. It was so normal they didn't think about it. Yeah, like I feel like for the first part, do you think it's a fair assessment given the individual benefits of lives? Yeah. I mean, I think it is a fair assessment, but at the same time, like that assessment doesn't really eliminate the analysis of good soldiers. But when we talk about I think it's sort of like splitting hairs when people talk about like, oh, some Wehrmacht soldiers were actually good, which is like that's true. But like that doesn't do anything. Like that doesn't actually like that's more of an exception to the rule than a rule itself. Does that make sense? Like the extraordinary circumstances of like a few individuals is nice, but it doesn't like eliminate the vast majority of soldiers like did evil things. So
yeah, like being nice to doing something kind to save the lives of a bunch of people in a country that you're invading is secondary to the fact that you're invading that country.
Yeah. Um, like I can like see some like you can put back something when you talk about like the people are conscripted and people are afraid of their own lives. Like that's all true, but that's also why I think when people do I think the analysis people need to make that like yeah, people were forced into doing evil things, and there were individuals who may have avoided doing bad things even as soldiers and did good things, and those people deserve to be celebrated. But at the same time, like the point of arguing about these things is is entirely secondary to the point of like the military itself is bad because it forces people to do these things, or fascist ideology is bad because it forces people to do these things. In the case of the Wehrmacht, like you can blame it on the military itself, which is like I think that's a fair point, and I think it's a fair point to like criticize the military as an institution. Because when people try to defend like some soldiers were good, what they're doing here is like they're not trying to like save the reputation of like an individual who may or may not have been I don't who might get a bad rap because they were conscripted, which is like that probably happens, but
Yeah, I get like it's
like why are people trying to defend the institution of the military while defending those individuals? Like you can watch and you can see an individual as like breaking free of the institution of the Wehrmacht rather than seeing them as part of that institution but still being good.
and
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and people know about that sort of like perceptual disconnection because these institutions oftentimes will use these examples as a way to look the other way or to draw attention away from the darker aspects of the things they do, like TikTok cops dancing with people, or like just all of the like the PR that they will do will be like, don't think about the institution, just think about the nice guy. And someone just brought up like, what about an Oscar Schindler type character? Oscar Schindler was one civilian. He was not a soldier. He was not involved with the government. But second of all, that guy literally put his life on the line in like a level that he specifically was in the system to undermine it, running factories that were literally putting out faulty munitions in order to undermine the war effort. Like he was actively sabotaging the war that he was inside. He was more of a resistance person than he was like I'm just part of the system. I think like what we're more talking about is like, oh, like it's the bad apples or good like there are some good cops, though. Shouldn't we just kind of shouldn't we like? So the person who asked this question has like wrote a whole bunch of follow-up stuff in the chat. Said that they're asking this because this person's a common person, regular in the chat, who's from Cyprus. And some acts of good soldiering during the Turkish invasion of Cyprus saved people's lives from horrific abuse, and nationalists connected to anti-Turkish sentiment. Does that individual kindness not help break through propaganda?
I mean, it can be, but I feel it's also. I feel like I don't really see a purpose of like because like there are probably like Oscar Schindler type people who like were conscripted or like who have been soldiers and done good things as part of their service. But when people focus on those things too much, they often like they treat it as a situation that is common within the framework that you're discussing, like the military, rather than that those good actions are by far extraordinary and not encouraged by that system. Like they are. Good soldiering is something that comes despite of the military, not because of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like if you were a person who became a police officer as like an undercover investigative journalist to expose all the terrible things the police were doing, then yeah, sure, go for it. But if you're like just a cop who
Even
happens
like
to
if
help
you,
find someone's dog, that's a different story.
but even if you do become a cop with the like mindset that like you are like the mindset that you're gonna be like one of the good cops and you do everything right, so to say. Um, a cop like that who like works in an anti-racist way and like works against police brutality and like all of those things, like a quote unquote good cop. When those people exist, like every time people talk about those people, it has to be clear that those things only exist despite of the police, not because the police is like encouraging them. Like they are the police, if the police had its way, would be against that sort of behavior. Um, and that those individuals will always be exceptions to the rule.
Yeah. But this sort of like ambiguity is one of the reasons why it's why I'm not like I'm not for the argument that like, you know, when the revolution comes, every single individual soldier is going to be put in front of a like war crimes tribunal or something like that.
Mm.
Or that like every single one of them are, just by being members of the military, instantly guilty of crimes against the revolution, and therefore will be like along with the sparrows lined up and shot. Like no.
No, like you know, there is a gray area here, but when people criticize the military, they are talking about that it is overwhelmingly a negative area. Mm-hmm. Cops are overwhelmingly a bad thing.
Yeah, there's a really great episode of, I think it's like one of the last episode of Adam Ruins Everything, because that show got super based right before it got canceled.
Yeah, because they knew they were getting canceled, and it was like, cool, I can just let go and say whatever I want.
Yeah, and there's the one where like this kid wants to wants to serve his community and wants to help people, and so he's like, I'm gonna become a police officer, and the entire episode is Adam being like, no, don't do it.
Don't do that.
Just say no to cop.
Just say no to cop. There are so many different ways to serve a community. So like, yeah, I hope that's a fairly okay answer in the sense. Like yeah, like good, like a good soldier who actually does good things can inspire other soldiers to do good things as well. But like. That's not like an argument to encourage someone to become a soldier, even if they are a good person. Like a good soldier, a good cop will probably make other good cops, but that's not an argument to make people into cops, because cops generally, like as a baseline foundation, are bad. Soldiers as a baseline foundation are bad. I mean, I'm sounding like a broken record. I'm sorry. I'm repeating myself.
No, it's good. It's good to repeat yourself. I'm learning that. It's good to just rephrase the same things in multiple different ways, because it helps different people understand things differently. That's why, like, when I'm like, oh, I'm always repeating myself, and then someone's like, no, that's a good thing. Keep doing it. You never know who's going to come across what. What's up?
What? No, you go. I'm just reading the question again just to double check some things.
Someone's trying to defend the police, and I was like, oh, abolishing the police is a good thing, and there's a lot of you're rejecting that idea out of hand shows a lack of imagination and also a lack of research, because there are people who have talked about how to keep the peace and keep society together and working and safe without needing police, and they have written tons of books and stuff about that you can definitely look at, and there's been no example that needing armed C students from high school is going to, or giving all of the high school bullies weapons is going to somehow is like a necessary evil or whatever. Anyways, let's see. How do we deal with situations? Okay, this is another like mega question.
Oh.
I think Christos thinks that we're a lot smarter than we are.
We're not that smart. We sound smart when we write videos, but like, we're historians. if it's not 1,000 years old, we don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah, and we're in the humanities, which is the people who spend their time at the bar when all the scientists are in the laboratory.
We're the people who get drunk and talk about like if only the Battle of Tours had gone the other way.
Yeah, like I don't know. It is maybe a bit of a stereotype, but I've been to the grad student bars, and the grad student bars are 100% filled with humanities students because all of the, if you ever know the like hard science people, they are like, yeah, I gotta get up at like 6:30 because I have to go pipette something in a laboratory for 10 days, 10 hours, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no. Okay, how do we deal with situations where a cause we think is just, like a revolution, an anti-colonial movement, or the Allies in World War II did something we think is bad, like Hiroshima or the bombing of Dresden, which I know wasn't as bad as the Nazis make it, but it still killed civilians? How do we deal with such issues when someone whose ideas are evil utilizes such acts as tools, i.e. Nazis and Japanese fascists using Hiroshima and Dresden, or colonial apologists and right-wingers talking about atrocities committed by anti-colonial left-wing governments? I'm asking not because I wish to equivocate, but because I don't think the left ever has a good line for talking about these things or actually making amends for them, even if they were fighting the good fight. Yep. You can see my answer to this in a video I made a year ago called "Is Socialism a Threat?" Where I answer this exact question.
I feel like it's also answered like a bit by Sean's video on the bombing of Hiroshima. The like, I think whenever like someone like tries to use these ideas to deflect from like a good background, like a good movement generally, I think that's when you sort of have to like take a step back and like not think of things as like big tent movements that are like uniformly doing one thing altogether, like much like history, every social movement or political movement or military movement or whatever is it's like a conflagration of like hundreds of thousands of actions made by individuals, and you can discuss with the rationale between those like decisions based on like the wider ideology of a movement. But like I think it's fine to like acknowledge that something shitty happened and be like, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, and also like
Sucks.
not
Sound good, guys.
like denying those kinds of things also I feel like gives room that like fascists can use to try and make their argument. Like this is happening a lot in Eastern Europe, where the sort of victims of communism narrative, like for example, Ukrainians have a bit of a Nazi problem because they have this long history of horrible things that happened to them under the Soviet regime, and then when you talk to communists, especially those who are more like apologists for the Soviet Union, they will just be like, oh yeah, that thing that happened to your grandmother never happened. It didn't, or they deserved it. I can't tell which one I'm doing today, but and like those kinds of things, it's like you're going to then have this person be like, wait, why would I support your cause if you're like completely ignoring the history of things that happened to us? And then, Mr. Jackboot Nazi comes in and goes, well, I acknowledge your pain. And this is why you have so many like people in Eastern Europe who are turning to fascism. And this is why if you if you make any left-wing content, you're going to get angry comments from people from Eastern Europe who are mad that you're supporting communism or the left in general. And this bullshit, this happens. And if you don't acknowledge the like horrors of history and like stuff that's done even in the name of justice and progress and everything, you're gonna end up you're going to end up like ceding room to horrible people.
Yeah, like by not acknowledging it, you're basically surrendering the entire point to the other side.
Yeah.
Like, Like there are no good options here, but there is one option that is significantly less bad than the other option. So, you know.
I interviewed a historian or I don't think she's a historian. I think she's an Eastern European Studies professor, Kirsten Godsey, for my video on Is Socialism a Threat? And one of the things that she pointed out is that, like, in a lot of these public history projects, like in Bulgaria, for example, they're making like a lot of these like victims of communism memorials. And in doing so, they're like putting like this list of like, the 10 bajillion people who died under communism in Bulgaria. And then when you look at it, like the people that are getting put on that list, or who are part of the list, are throwing in like part of the Nazi, like the Nazi puppet state that was put up in Bulgaria during World War II. And it's like, wait a minute, why is this Nazi on this Victims of Communism memorial?
Yeah. So like you can definitely like you have to sort of like you have to contend a little bit just so that shit doesn't happen. Like that's why you have to sort of like acknowledge the bad shit, so you don't just give them everything, because then they do this shit. And that's how you get like Victims of Communism book talking about like abortions in the Soviet Union being counted as victims of communism.
And someone just said, doesn't Canada have a few Victims of Communism memorials as well? Yes, Stephen Harper built a really big one in Ottawa.
Why Canada?
Because Canada has a really big Ukrainian expat community. And so, and a lot of them live in conservative-friendly provinces, or in conservative liberal battleground areas. And so, the Conservative Party, in order to ensure the Ukrainian expat vote, goes like super hard anti-Russia in every case it can. Even when like during like the 2014, during the Crimean crisis, the Canadian state was like being like trying to like be like a badass against like Vladimir Putin, like, which is just like, what did you think you were going to be doing, Canada? How are you going to stop Vladimir Putin exactly? But like you end up with like fucked up shit, like how because of vandalism last year, the year before, the Ukrainian community in southern Ontario made a memorial for a fucking SS division.
Yeah, like I've heard about this SS memorial in Canada. Is it still there?
I think it might have been taken down now, but the thing is that it's on private property. But the thing, the problem was that this memorial to a Ukrainian SS division, the police were originally investigating, like they spray painted like Nazi scum or something on it, and the police were investigating this as a hate crime against Nazis. And it's like, wait, what?
A hate crime against Nazis? Yeah.
It's like,
of course.
Oh boy.
Anti-communism in like like NATO countries and like Western world has really like fucked people up, because like because like that's the only world where like that's even seen as like even closely acceptable, whereas like yeah, Nazis are bad, but you can, if you hate Nazis just for being Nazis, that's also a hate crime. Christ.
Yeah.
God, someone just said that Nazis are actually protected by hate crime laws in Spain. Jesus Christ.
It's got to be the most. That's got to be the most like. That's the only that could only exist in a country that was fascist for like 50 years, while like a lot of countries were not. Fascism did not last that long in other places.
Yeah.
Or
Franco saw what the fuck happened in Central Europe and saw that let's not invade anyone.
Yeah.
Typically it goes bad.
And if you just say you're against communism, everyone will like you, no matter how horrible you are.
Yeah, you can completely suppress your own population and cultural minorities as long as you hate communism.
Yeah. So that I actually do think that was a really good question, because I do think that this is a thing. The left today, not interacting with history, despite the fact that Marx is all about like history is like super important and you should have a historical understanding of things, is causing a lot of problems, and the only people who are engaging with it are people who are like doing fucking weird tanky genocide denial stuff, and it's like, okay.
And I also hate it so much because it seems like when a lot of the, like, especially when it comes to like victims of communism discourse, it really seems like 90% of that discourse is either communism killed 10 billion people, or communism, like Stalin was uwu baby, didn't kill anyone. Like there's no fucking in between there.
Yeah.
Like either abortion is a crime against humanity made by communists, or the fault, it was the Ukrainians' own fault that the clouds didn't rain. Like there's no in between here.
Finland invaded itself. Okay. Finland invaded itself, and
Finland invaded itself. Yes, of course.
Estonia and Latvia didn't exist. It was uninhabited territory before the Soviets showed up.
Yeah, they were just rebel territory for a long time, and who were freed by Uwu Big Bear Soft Daddy Comrade Stalin.
Like
that's gonna get clipped out of context because I'm like, obviously I'm criticizing here.
Now there are some tankies that like are Marxist Leninists or whatever, where the closest thing they come to making an argument is that like, yeah, Stalin was really bad, but was like the like only somebody that horrible and brutal could have been the thing that defeated the Nazi war machine, which like, I guess, but I don't know, if you like study the way that Stalin managed that war, it's like the Soviets won that war in spite of Stalin, not because of him. Because like they're like, the Nazis are invading. Good, I'm going to go hide in my room for 2 weeks while the Nazis are encroaching on our borders, and then they're like, all right, well, how do we fight them back? Let's go to our generals. And it's like, all of the generals were just partisans that were loyal to Stalin, because all of the generals that had experience and knew what they were doing were arrested and put in kangaroo courts for counter-revolutionary activities and are currently in the gulags. And so they like had to pull like Soviet generals out of the gulags who had like, there's like the whole like what's it called, the James Bond villain with the metal teeth, like they had to like give like metal teeth to like these Soviet generals because like during the purges they had their teeth kicked in when they were like the shit beaten out of them. Then they spent like years in fucking Siberia, and then they're like, all right, the Nazis are invading, you have to be a general again.
Shit. Gotta come back. Put Shukov back from Siberia.
Yeah.
from the Eastern Front. And Narcopanda said the Shukov won the war. Oh, for sure. 100%. Once like, you know, you can make a lot of criticism about like Field Marshal Shukov himself, when you probably should. But like, anti-communists don't really do that. It's way easier to criticize Stalin, which is, you know, makes sense because Stalin.
Yeah, and there's one, like, if you were to look at like the organizational structure of World War II, of the Soviets and the Nazis specifically, you can almost see like an inverse organizational structure starting to form as the war moved on, where the Wehrmacht became started off being led by people who knew what they were doing, and as time moved along, Hitler sort of maneuvered more and more power to come directly from him. And that's why, like, as the war moves on, the Nazi war machine gets like weaker and weaker and unable to function because.
Well, you know, okay. You're right here. You are right, but I also don't want to like give in far too much into like that narrative, because like a big reason why, like another like big reason why like the Nazi war machine kind of like halted eventually is like partially that, but also because, you know, once the Soviet Union kind of got their stick up out of their ass and realized that they were at war and were currently losing, like once they actually like dedicated themselves to some fucking effort, then they actually started like outmaneuvering like Nazi generals.
Oh yeah,
like, that's like.
Well, here's the other thing is that while that was happening, the Soviets went the opposite route, where when the war started, everything was directly from Stalin to like sycophants, and then he was like, actually, we should probably have generals that know what generaling is, and it's like, they got better.
Like that's because that's where I've heard that sort of argument that like, oh, only someone as harsh as Stalin could have won the war, because like I think the truth is somewhere in between the like. The Soviet Union won that front both thanks to and despite of at the same time, but in various types.
Yeah, because you end up
Like
hearing stories like how there was like a Soviet brigade that was like ordered to cross a river, and they were like, "There's no bridge here. The map says there's a bridge here, but there isn't, and like we can't just march across this river. We'll drown." And then the orders from up top were like, "The map says there's a bridge. You're marching across that river," and like tons of people died because they tried to like force these people across the river to comply with orders from like some general who was just like, I don't know. He was like a potato farmer who's like never been to like an officer school.
who doesn't understand that like you can actually disagree. But like, yeah, like once I do want to say that because like I don't want to say that like the Nazis lost because of their own incompetence and because like in the Soviets kind of was out of luck, because the Soviets did win like out of like they won at Stalingrad, for example, like the turning point of the war, because of superior tactics, and I feel like that's important to mention. But like, yeah, like, how did we get here? Why are we talking about war history?
A lot of the good Soviet tactics also came from the fact that was stuff that was like improvised on the battlefield more than like strong, like up high
something. And like definitely like from Stalin, like taking a step back and realizing maybe I shouldn't like be in charge of every single combat.
Yeah. He what's it called? He was playing Total War and he said he's going to auto resolve some of these instead of.
I'm just gonna leave it to the AI, and I can focus on like finding more people in the gulags to like maybe make my factories work better.
I know that it never happened, but I just love all of the like really awkward conversations of like the guy who has been putting the like general who is putting the gulag for counter-revolutionary activities, and by counter-revolutionary activities saying that they liked Trotsky once. They shook Trotsky's hand once at a dinner in 1922 or something, and that was what put him in prison. And then being like, "So we're really sorry about that. Would you like to come fight a war for us now?"
Please come help. Also, Anarcho says Zhukov's introduction in The Death of Stalin is still one of my favorite movie moments. For sure. Great movie.
It is a great movie. It is, but that movie was also possibly designed to just be catnip for the two of us specifically.
Yes. I might rewatch that movie today, actually. It's a really good movie.
Yeah. Alrighty. Oh, I made a little mistake on something. Let me just fix that. But, alright.
This entire 20 minutes that we've been talking about the Soviet Union will have to be deleted from everyone's memory and off the internet forever. Lest people like start clipping out various like specific points to make it seem that we're saying things that we aren't. Because depending on what you remember from this conversation, you can come out of this conversation with the conclusion that I believe literally anything about the Soviet Union.
Yep. The Soviet Union was good. The Soviet Union was bad. The Soviet Union was okay. There you go. You've got all three.
There you go. Perfect. It's complicated. History is complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated and mostly sad. Okay. We got this one. So, a follow-up to the question about symbols that are detached from their original content, i.e. like things like the Confederate flags being used by bikers in Europe. Mm-hmm. What do we do in cases where a symbol in one culture has a horrific meaning in another, i.e. like swastikas being used by Hindus and Jains, especially when they are immigrants to a Western country, or a symbol or word that has lost its meaning over time, words like lame or stupid, which used to be descriptive terms, but now are just insults without their original context being present?
I feel like words derive their meaning from their interpretation, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I really don't think that like the original context matters when it comes to like language or symbology. That's like my hot take, that like it doesn't really matter that the swastika, for example, like originally is a symbol of peace, and like maybe we can rehabilitate it, because like that might happen, it might not. It doesn't really matter today, because today the connotation people have with the swastika is Nazism.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, but you can also understand that if you saw swastikas at like a Hindu wedding, that you're not going to be like, oh my god, these Hindus are all Nazis. Like, no, like. Yeah,
but at the same time, like, as we like view language and symbology, we have to take the context into where that is applied. but we still can't remove like the effect that will have like on us individually, right? Like if you go to a Hindu wedding, you see a swastika, like it's going to hit weirdly, but then you have to sort of like override that hitting with, with the context of the situation, because like that's also like a big part of like symbology and language, but like it's never going to go away in this at that sense, like that's just a consequence of the current meaning of it. It might change, it might not. Like I feel like it's kind of hard to argue this issue in any like constructive way because like language is more descriptive than prescriptive. So
yeah,
yeah.
And these things could change, and yeah, I think a lot of ways context is super important, and like that some things get lost in the ages of time and have their meaning completely changed. Like, yeah, the word stupid comes from like really like old school ableist terms about people with with like intellectual disabilities and stuff like that. Just like the word dumb, like that's a word that I have no, it's like it comes from again, people who have intellectual disabilities or but like it's also they're also words that are kind of like their use in that context is so old now that it sort of like lost its original meaning. So I guess in one way it is like you're never going to have the list of, this is why culture is complicated and we're never going to have like a world without controversy, because there's never going to be the official list of all the no-no words, and that if you just avoid them because they're like magic symbols that make bad things happen, but it's just that they are images and words that have connections in our heads, and at some point all the connections build and get destroyed. And like things like the swastika, like as an example, World War II is still in living memory, barely, but it still is. And at the same time, it is a symbol used by a movement that still exists and still kills people to this day. Yeah. So it's like
if that stopped, for example, say for example, like Nazism like just died out as an ideology, heaven. But like let's say like no bad people ever use the swastika again. Like within within a generation or two, like that context is going to change. Then, like the swastika is going to develop a new meaning, but it retains its meaning because people still retain it as in the bad connotation, like as you say.
Gummy Joe, thank you so much for the super chat. On the Step Back History on the Carnation Revolution episode, love the channel. I'm slowly getting my girlfriend to like history, and you've helped a lot. Well, that's nice. I don't know anything about the Carnation Revolution. Do you know this? Do you know what this is?
Yeah, it's where it's an overthrow of the Estado Novo regime in Portugal to overthrow the authoritarian regime at the time.
I mean, I
don't know much more about it.
Yeah, you might need a better history channel for that. That is more knowledgeable, because my knowledge of Portugal is that it exists. One time its king lived in Brazil, and that they legalized drugs. So you might want somebody a little bit better at this kind of stuff.
That led to the end of the Portuguese colonial wars. And apparently led to the Indonesian invasion of East Timor. So
fun.
Look at that. I guess while Portugal was having a moment politically, I guess all independence movements and Indonesia decided to oh cool, colonial territory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is super. I know that Portugal was also had a Franco type character who actually was in power before Franco. I think his name was Salazar, but I don't know very much.
That tracks.
I'm notoriously bad at Europe stuff. Whenever
Antonio
I see
de Oliveira Salazar.
Yeah, whenever I see history associated with paintings of a bunch of white men in suits that are funny looking, my eyes start to glaze over in a lot of ways. So. Yeah. I've had a rough time. I had to take 2 European history classes. The only European history classes I took in undergrad were a French Revolution class and a like, I can't remember the other one I took. Honestly, I can't remember. But yeah. Oh boy.
Someone's asking if Estadonova was fascism. Probably not. They were authoritarian, but I don't think they had like fascist tendencies as we would describe it today. Like
Yeah.
I think they were. I think what they are, what Hearts of Iron would call, neutral but authoritarian.
Yeah, we need to back off on the need to call an authoritarianism I don't like a Nazi or a
Yeah.
fascism, because fascism has a meaning, and if there's one thing about the fact that we can't really communicate when fascists are fascists these days, is because TBH we overuse the word a lot for the last few
We do
decades.
overuse it quite a lot.
And now that there's like an actual fascist threat, we're kind of crying wolf at this point, and it sucks.
It sucks.
Okay.
I do play Estado Novo every fucking time I play Portugal and Hearts of Iron 4 though. So that's literally why I know a little bit about Estado Novo and in Portugal. That's it. Thank you, Hearts of Iron.
Always doing it. Okay. So there's a question about this. Okay, this is a question about a man by the name of Steven Crowder. So Steven Crowder wears drag a lot on his show, and that has led to some progressives to speculated that he's closeted trans. Do you think people want that to be true because they don't like Crowder and want to believe that he's dealing with self-loathing? If yes, is wishing that on someone, even someone as loathsome as Crowder, transphobic?
I hate the idea that like people who are transphobic or homophobic are actually secret trans people or secretly gay people, because I feel like that blames a lot of like transphobia and homophobia on trans people and LGBT people, like gay people generally. I think it's bullshit. Like I think that is a little bit transphobic. It's one thing for like trans people to sort of like make a tongue-in-cheek joke about like when will Crowder transition. Like that's one thing, but that's also like taken with the grain of salt that that's like obviously not really the case. Like it's one thing for like gay people to like comment on like a virulent homophobe being like, haha, you should just like, you know, be like admit you're gay. Like that's one thing. That's like coping with the phobia. But like when people aren't part of that subculture or part of that group, then it just becomes like an outside like view in, and it loses its sort of like self-admitted irony. You know, like it like people, because when people do it to themselves, then it's like haha, like tongue in cheek, and you kind of like you're making the joke on your own accord. You can't do that if you're not like part of the subculture. Then it just then like you can do it, but it loses its entire like ironic value. Then it's no longer ironic. You're just straight up. Like the ironic homophobia or the ironic transphobia of someone doing it to themselves doesn't work when someone is doing it to the group. Anyway, fuck Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
The fact that he's still on fucking YouTube, though, the fact that YouTube, like, not like a week ago or some shit like that, talked about like not offering a platform for like anti-Asian violence, and still holding fucking Steven Crowder, who is like one of the most famous racists and like homophobes and transphobes and just misogynists generally on YouTube. It's fucking weird.
It's so fucking.
Like he's on Alex Jones levels of fucking strange at this point.
Yeah, he's such a fucking. He's a coward, is the thing. Like, it's that like because I've like talked to people on YouTube about Steven Crowder specifically. Like I've yelled at YouTube people about Steven Crowder. I do it about once a year when I go to VidCon, it's like very obviously the lines that they give, it's that they're afraid of the right-wing media rage machine being turned on them, which like I get, but also you're the second largest search engine on Earth, and like there are multiple studies coming out that show that YouTube played like a huge role in the resurgence of fascism in our modern age. And like you can actually see like the rise of like anti-science and like far right conspiracy theories linked to YouTube implementing new search or new optimization algorithms in different countries. Like there's a really great study that shows that like the algorithm in its current state going to being implemented in Brazil led to the rise in the Brazil far right. Like you can see that like connection like right away. And it's just like, oh dear God.
Yeah, like social media has like a definite effect. That's not to say that the individual YouTubers have like a huge effect on their own. It's a cumulative thing by hundreds and hundreds of creators and videos and ideologies that like pool themselves. I feel like that's an important thing to mention.
Yeah. Although when you have like 1 million subscribers or whatever the fuck Crowder has, like that's it's fair, decent impact. And he's one of those people that. Okay, no, I'm getting him screwed up with Dave Rubin again, because Dave Rubin's the one who is like the one that pulls in like the rational skeptic, but then is like, I'm just gonna have this like white supremacist interview where I'm just not gonna do anything critical, and I'm just gonna sit there and like nod while more like, you know, we ratchet some people further down the radicalization funnel. But I don't know where Crowder sits in that, because I am not the kind of YouTuber who can just like sit through horrible content to respond to it. But yeah, Crowder sucks, and YouTube is being extremely cowardly because they know that Crowder is like attached to big money, and like they know that the right are like the right have found like have weaponized victim narratives to an absolutely like nth degree, and will use it to say that YouTube's doing a 1984 by taking a racist down after a racist mass shooting.
Yeah, but it turns out that like it's actually fine for them to play the victim. I actually think it's fine for them to play the victim narrative. Like people are afraid of like, oh, we can't ban them because then they're gonna play the victim. And it's like, I'm fine with that. Just ban them. I don't care. Like if they can play the victim all they want, they can become the victim. I don't care. They're like far right, like clowns who perpetuate evil ideologies. I don't care about their rights.
I'm
sorry.
YouTube is a corporation that's afraid to make a statement on principle, which I hate.
I mean, especially since like they are connected to big money as well. Like Crowder's like network, what is it, like Blaze TV or some shit like that. Like they're connected. They are funded by the same people who fund PragerU, like like petrochemical billionaires. Like I found a lot about this out when I did my research for my video on free speech, that like a ton of like this like far radicalization on YouTube as a platform and Facebook and like all sorts of media platforms. What we see in terms of like Steven Crowder and PragerU, for example, they are the end result of like 4 different stages of like money laundering from various types of petrochemical billionaires, who do it in order to like you know, in the end like radicalize people into believing anti-science and anti-democratic ideas so that they can support their dying industries and make more money.
And Steven Crowder does seem to have a preoccupation with hating trans people, but as we've seen in like the UK, that's not necessarily that doesn't necessarily say something about themselves. Just people get obsessed about their hatreds. So
yeah, like yeah, he just fucking hates trans people. Like that's it. It's not deeper than that.
It's just American Glinner.
American Glinner, but like somehow better than American Glinner, because Glinner is just like, which is worse, because Glinner was awful, but he was also bad at what he was doing. Steven Crowder is like effective to his own audience, which is like I feel more dangerous. You know.
Yeah. That story about how where Glinner had to say that he like lost his marriage and like destroyed his life just out of like just to fuel his hate campaign against trans people is just like just attempting to care about you. It's failing, not working. Yep. So, okay, so next we got I have OCD and autism, and I can sometimes come across as a bit because of that. This is a British thing. Come across as a bit. That feels like a British thing. Occasionally, women on their own avoid me. Is that reasonable or discriminatory on their part? Oh boy.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So this is so I don't know the Britishism here, but I have OCD and autism, and I can come across as a bit awkward, I guess, because of that. As a bit awkward because of that. Occasionally, women on their own avoid me. Is that reasonable or discriminatory on their part?
Sorry, you kind of glitched out again.
Okay, so yeah. So the writer of the question has OCD and autism, as a result of which they can be awkward in conversations, and because of that, women on their own avoid him. Is that reasonable or discriminatory?
I mean, a bit of both. Like on one end, you can't blame like individuals for like doing doing things that make them more comfortable. But if that is still like rooted in an idea of like misunderstanding social awkwardness, like that is also like not great. Like it's a bit of both. Like it is understandable, and it's not like wrong, but at the same time it's like based in something, like it's based in something discriminatory.
Yeah, they're caught up in a system. Also, it's important to understand that that like me as a man doesn't appreciate that, like like the fact that like I always like I don't know of a single woman who doesn't have stories about like just being terrified for their lives for existing in a world. And so while their their dangerous person alarm might be setting off a false alarm, it's because like women live in a more dangerous world than men do. I don't know, I know that this is this is a thing, like there's a reason why like women, like if they're like in an elevator with a man, will fucking start putting their keys between their fingers because they're worried about this shit. Like, I mean, you're a woman, you know this stuff.
Yeah. Like, it's, you can't fault individuals for living in a society, but the society is still the society is faulted. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. ContraPoints talks a little bit about this when it came to, because like this doesn't just reproduce itself in like people who are neurodivergent and therefore socially awkward, but it comes across in like racism and sex and like racism and transphobia. This is a lot big stuff to do with transphobia too. Like this is the danger that women are put in, mixed with the the sort of toxicity of our society towards marginalized people. Like that combination of trauma and bigotry is like the entire thing fueling J.K. Rowling. It sounds like it's it's complicated situation for sure. And I'm not giving J.K. Rowling a pass on that, by the way. But it's like
there's something like there's a gray area, right, where like most people operate. Like most people have, I feel like it's an individual's like responsibility to like be informed. And like it becomes like dangerous when someone is like willingly uninformed or is informed but is malicious about it. Like that's where like issues are. If someone's just like uninformed and lives in a society where like that's like it's not really expected of anyone to be informed, even though they should. Like you can't really blame people for living in a society that is a bit fucked up.
Yeah.
Even though people should do better and society should also be better, but
Yeah, definitely try. And if you gave somebody, like, if you're talking to somebody one-on-one, definitely give them advice. But like, there's the whole thing about be kind to people and be cruel to systems. So good.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think botching the pandemic response is going to change the perception that Sweden is a utopia?
No. Sweden could completely fuck up. Sweden could revoke free healthcare and people would still think it's a utopia because it's. I don't know why, but
Sweden's got some good soft power going.
yeah, oh yeah, like this, the perception of Sweden is like powerful, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Like because I don't think it's just I don't think it's based on anything real anymore. I think it's just like a self-sustaining idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a. This will be the last question since we're coming close to 2:00. I just listened to a podcast where Robert Evans interviewed a group of trans people who set up an alpaca ranch in Colorado. First of all, based or poggers, but they're now being harassed by right-wing militia people in the area. If you're a right-wing libertarian and you actually cared about being ideologically consistent, wouldn't you have to say you bought this land, you're using it to support yourself? How can you can live however you want on it?
Yeah, if they were ideologically consistent, which they never are.
No, there's. I will go as far to say as it is actually impossible to be both right wing and a libertarian, because right wing, like being right wing, is by its very definition you being interested in dictating the minutia of other people's lives to fit an agenda of either wanting to take their resources or just oppress them because they don't fit an extremely narrow worldview that you have determined as what's correct for yourself. And libertarianism is about freedom and equality and like wanting to, just vibe. It's the vibe-based ideology. But so like right, like I don't know, is like the fact that like every libertarian seems to have turned into a Nazi in the last like 5 years says quite a bit. Yeah, what they really wanted, which is that they, if you meet libertarians, they either are really interested, they have like some issue that they're really mad about, and that's the reason they're a libertarian. They either want to drink raw milk or marry children, or you talk to them and you realize that they think the wrong side won World War II. So it's like, oh, okay, weird. Let's see. That was a quick one. Let's see if we can do one more. The UK government, and I think some southern state governments in the US, are on the verge of passing laws that make it way harder to legally hold protests in public. Yeah, that whole I got to read something on what's going on in the UK because I have not sat down and like been like I'm going to find out what's going on here. In reaction to what happened last year, is there a way to do an effective mass protest movement without incurring a state backlash like that? Or do you have to accept that's how the man will respond if you decide to take to the streets?
I think the latter.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like it sucks that it is that way, but like unfortunately that's sort of the way it is. Yeah, like the UK. God, the UK is like fucking banning protests altogether. If it causes annoyance.
Yeah, I
10 years prison for causing annoyance to a cop.
I would make the argument that the reaction that states have show that. I mean, to me, it's a surefire sign. It's like, oh, this is why states and democracy are kind of incompatible, because democracy is only compatible as long as you use it to legitimize their rule and the things that they say. But if you come anywhere close to threatening them or doing something that they actually don't want to do, they will bring down the wrath of God upon you. That's their entire MO. It's kind of these are the kinds of moments where I'm like, this is why I'm an anarchist, because this is like the points where it's like, if anything that will be a substantial change, the state will come in and they will they'll crack down. There are limits on democracy, and states keep it in a very small bounds of what they think is safe for them. So, yeah,
it's not great.
Read the Conquest of Bread, everybody, or The Ecology of Freedom by God, what the fuck's that guy's name? By Murray Bookchin. Read Murray Bookchin and Kropotkin and Bakunin if you're feeling spicy. And Emma Goldman. Just read Emma Goldman's books. Read Emma Goldman theory and then do what Emma Goldman do, which was have sex, dance, and do revolution. Those the
three pillars of a happy life.
read book by Dead Man with Beard. I mean, if there's a lot of like I don't know, like every time like this is the types of times where I'm just like petitioning and asking the state to politely do the thing that needs to be done is always going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go on our separate ways, Mia, would you like to tell everybody though where your content is so that they may consume it?
You may consume content on miamulder.com, which will take you to my YouTube channel, and that's where most of my content is. Or you can go to Spotify and search for Leechfets to listen to the podcast that I do, that I co-host about medical history, which is a good podcast. Yeah, we've released like 5 episodes, I think. You can listen to the most recent one on Patreon because we released early. If you want like more just pure history content. So yeah, you can get that.
All right, and as I said, I won't be around tomorrow. On Friday, I'm going to be doing a stream with Mexi, so it's about to raid the Possum Queen, but the Possum Queen is not at her computer, so we're going to raid Rob Russo, I guess. It's the next on the list. So
Yes.
yeah, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and be good. Dance, sex, and revolution. Go. Alrighty. And
All right.